Hey guys, tonight we travel back to the cold, wet world of fjords, wool tunics, and fermented fish. But not on purpose. You were just trying to get that perfect shot. Sunlight kissing the water, wind gently tussling your hair. The kind of image that says, I hike, but also have a curated Instagram aesthetic. You step closer to the rocky edge. The moss is slipperier than it looks. One wrong step, a yelp, a blur of sky and stone and darkness. When you blink awake, your phone is gone. Your earbuds are gone. Your waterproof jacket is now a sodden fur pelt that smells like wet goat. You're lying in a dim longhouse with a roof that drips and breathes smoke. A hairy man the size of a closet leans over you, nodding gravely. He says one word, Gloopfrid, then slaps your shoulder hard enough to rotate your spine and walks off. You've just been adopted. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And as always, let me know where you're listening from and what time it is there. I love seeing the sleepy little map we build together. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You sit up slowly. The world tilts. Smoke curls from the central hearth, thick and biting. Something's roasting. Maybe meat, maybe moss. The walls are logs packed with clay, and the floor is hard-packed mud. A dog limps past wearing what might be a chicken as a hat. You are not in 2025 anymore. You try to speak, maybe ask for help or a charger, but the sound you make is more of a croak. Someone hands you a horn of something warm, sour, and slightly fizzy. You drink. It's like kombucha made by a troll. The man who called you Gloopfrid returns, smiling like a bear in human skin. He hands you a tunic that smells like cheese and slaps your back again. Your ribs might never forgive him. Soon others gather. You notice every man is bearded, every woman is strong-jawed and more armed than you, and everyone has dirt under their nails, including the toddlers, especially the toddlers. One woman points at your shoes and cackles. They are modern hiking boots, caked in mud, but clearly not handmade. They all look to Gloopfrid. He looks to you. The silence is awkward. You nod solemnly and raise your boot, then smash it into a nearby puddle, a small sacrifice. Everyone cheers. Someone starts drumming on a barrel. This apparently seals your fate. You've been claimed. A young girl, could be 12 or 40, it's hard to tell, hands you a carved wooden pendant shaped like something toothy. She says something that sounds like blessings of Njord. Historians still argue whether the Norse sea god was ever actually worshipped outside poetic sagas, but in this moment, you don't argue with the lady holding a sharp fishbone. Night falls fast. There's no electricity, only oil lamps and firelight. You try asking for help, maybe gesturing a phone or a clock. They think you're miming a wolf. Another one starts sharpening a knife. You decide to shut up. In the corner of the longhouse, you find a pile of furs and collapse into it. Something wriggles. Possibly a rat. Possibly a small deity. Doesn't matter. You're too tired to fight. As you lie there, eyelids heavy, you remember your Airbnb booking. Check-in was at 5 p.m. It's now. Well, time has no meaning in this smoky, fish-scented liminal space. Outside, wind howls like something hunting. Inside, someone is loudly chewing on bones. One fact floats to the surface of your brain from that one Viking documentary you half-watched once. Viking villages were often placed along fjords for easy access to raiding routes. You may be in Norway, or Sweden, or Iceland, or possibly just somewhere in your own dream. But the goose honk that erupts beside your head feels very real. You drift off, hoping to wake up.
Your first conscious thought is that someone has set fire to a raccoon and placed it gently on your face. Your second thought is, why does my mouth taste like fermented moss and disappointment? You peel open your eyes and see the source of the smoldering heat, a communal fire pit still glowing from last night's chaos. The smoke has settled into a thick, lazy fog that hugs the thatched ceiling and coats your lungs like medieval Vicks vapor rub. Around you, Vikings stir from their fur nests like disgruntled, very muscular cats. You sit up, a fur pelt sliding from your shoulders. The tunic you were given yesterday has dried into a stiff woolen crust. It smells stronger than before, like wet sheep and slightly burnt onions. You look down and notice something alarming. Your left boot is gone. In its place is a sandal woven from bark, twine, and what might be regret. A small boy waves your boot at you from across the room and yells something that includes the word Gloopfrid again. Everyone turns to look. Some smile, some nod solemnly. One man claps. You're starting to realize that Gloopfrid is no longer a joke. It is you. You stand slowly. Your back cracks like a snapped tree branch. Someone hands you a bowl of something steaming. You peer inside. It's gray. It wobbles. You smell fish, and is that sour milk? You take a cautious bite. The texture is halfway between porridge and guilt. The taste? If despair had a flavor, and that flavor was cod. Across the hall, your new family eats heartily, some with fingers, others with knives, a few with what appear to be pieces of antler. One man chews on something hairy and nods at you with approval. You try not to gag. Breakfast of champions, you whisper to yourself, and gastrointestinal emergencies. A woman plops down beside you. She's wearing layered furs. Her braids are beaded with what look like tiny bones, and her smile is both friendly and slightly threatening. She claps your shoulder and begins talking rapidly. You nod, you smile, you have no idea what she's saying. Historians still debate how mutually intelligible Old Norse dialects were across regions, but you're more concerned about the chunk of unknown meat she just dropped into your bowl with an encouraging grunt. Outside, the world is damp and hostile. You step out into the morning chill. Mist curls around the thatched rooftops like curious cats. Chickens peck at the mud. A pig grunts judgmentally at your mismatched footwear. Beyond the huts, longships rest on the pebble shore, carved dragon heads rising from the fog like curious sea monsters. You take a breath and try to orient yourself. No cars, no power lines, no snack bars or Wi-Fi hotspots. Just fjords, boats, smoke, and the growing suspicion that your phone battery is no longer your biggest problem. Suddenly they're shouting. A group of men, armed, large, enthusiastic, wave you over. One of them points at the boats, then at you, then makes a rowing motion. You wave back and smile. They frown. One throws you a paddle. Ah, you're being drafted. You trudge toward the water, your bark sandals squelching. As you climb aboard, you catch a whiff of old fish and damp fur. The boat is long, narrow, and clearly designed for people with significantly more biceps than you. You sit, you row. It begins. The drummer sets a rhythm, if you can call it that. It's somewhere between tribal war march and toddler with a wooden spoon. You try to match it, but your body was built for Wi-Fi, not warfare. Blisters bloom instantly. Sweat pools in your armpits. Your arms ache. Your back aches. Your soul aches. Someone hands you a dried fish strip as a snack. You chew. It resists, possibly for emotional reasons. The man next to you slaps your knee and laughs. You try to laugh back, but it comes out as a wheeze. You paddle onward. You are on a longship in a fjord in the year 841. This is not the vacation you booked. But still, there's something breathtaking about it. The mountains rise like sleeping gods. The water reflects a sky so pale it's nearly silver. The boat creaks like an old storyteller, and the wind plays with your hair in a way no fan ever could. This, you think, is probably the last thing you'd expect to miss. As the day stretches on, the rowing becomes meditative, sort of. Between the muscle cramps and the ominous clouds, you find a rhythm. You even start to hum. The man behind you joins in, then another. Soon the whole boat is groaning a strange off-key chant that might be a war song, or possibly just a sea shanty about goats. One line keeps repeating, Fisker, 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 which you're fairly sure just means fish. You chant anyway. Your sandal falls off. Nobody notices. You row through fog and hunger until land reappears, and with it, something burning.
You smell it before you see it. A sharp, oily tang in the air, part smoke, part seaweed, part, yes, unmistakably, disappointment. As the longship slides into the shallows, you glimpse a smudge of dark stone rising behind the mist. A squat monastery perched on a crag, its tower leaning ever so slightly, like it's had a rough couple of centuries. Seagulls scream overhead. A monk darts inside, his robe flapping like a panicked bat. You imagine he was in the middle of something peaceful, prayer perhaps, or baking spelt bread, when he noticed 30 furious Scandinavians arriving uninvited. You, meanwhile, are more concerned with your fingers, which no longer feel attached to your body. The boat scrapes onto the shore. The crew rises with the grim determination of men who've either done this many times before or simply enjoy breaking doors. Everyone grabs something, an axe, a shield, a horn, or, in one case, a chicken. The drummer stops. Silence falls. You clear your throat. The biggest Viking, let's call him Beardzilla, turns to you and pats your shoulder, then points back to the boat. You stare. He gestures again, more firmly. Ah, you're staying behind, again. While they charge up the hill with roars and gleaming weapons, you're left sitting awkwardly on the deck, watching their forms vanish into the mist. You're the unpaid intern of a medieval war party, the man whose job is to guard the boat. You look around. A limp fish, a broken paddle, a seagull staring at you like it knows you were vegan last month. Fine, you mutter, sitting down. I didn't want to plunder your weird bread anyway. Time passes, a lot of it. You try skipping stones. None skip. One of them bites you, possibly a crab. You whistle a pop song. It echoes eerily against the monastery walls. You imagine a monk inside, pausing mid-hymn, confused by the sudden appearance of Adele. Eventually, your stomach reminds you that rowing burns calories. You search the boat. You find a bag of dried something. It smells like betrayal. You chew. It might be fish. It might be rope. You decide not to ask further questions. Historians still argue whether Viking raids were truly as brutal and random as legends claim, or whether they were more organized acts of political coercion masked by later mythology. But from your view at the edge of the water, they seem pretty enthusiastic. Suddenly, from the hilltop, a whoop, then another, then the distinct sound of something wooden being kicked in. A small fire appears on the roof of the monastery. You raise your eyebrows. A few seconds later, one of the Vikings reappears, shirtless inexplicably, and jogs down to the boat, holding, is that a candelabra? He dumps it beside you like it's a sack of potatoes and runs back uphill. You stare at the candelabra. It's covered in beeswax and, for some reason, feathers. A few more minutes pass. Then the others return, panting, some bleeding lightly, one limping, but all smiling like men who found treasure or at least a decent beer. They climb aboard, drop various loot, scrolls, candlesticks, possibly a cheese wheel, into their rowing positions as if this was just a brisk morning jog. Beardzilla hands you something. It's a round, warm, slightly burnt biscuit. You bite into it. It tastes like soap. Or maybe justice. It's hard to tell. The ship launches. No fanfare. No music. Just the slow creak of oars and the crackle of a burning monastery behind you. You watch it shrink into the mist, a strange blend of guilt and awe and indigestion churns in your gut. Your boatmates don't seem fazed. They begin to sing, loudly, off-key. One guy starts beating his helmet like a drum. Another blows into a curved horn that makes a sound like a confused walrus. And just like that, the mood shifts. You're no longer a confused tourist on a cursed cruise. You're Gloopfrid, the boat watcher, protector of paddles, defender of scrolls no one can read. Back in the fjord, the day darkens. A drizzle begins. You pull your fur tighter. And for just a second, the rhythm of the oars, the misty cliffs, and the ridiculous horn echoing off the mountains almost feel right. Maybe this isn't the worst accidental vacation. Maybe. Until the guy behind you sneezes directly into your neck. Your arms are jelly. Your spine has been replaced with damp rope. Your hands, raw, blistered, and currently gripped around a paddle that feels more like a medieval torture device than a rowing instrument. Welcome to day 2 of being a Viking rower. You had dreams once, soft dreams, pillows, flat whites, a scented bath bomb fizzing in warm water. Instead, you're here, knees numb, but frozen, and rowing under a sky so gray it feels like someone turned the brightness settings of the world down to gloom. The drummer starts again. Boom, boom, boom. It's unclear whether he's setting a rhythm or just bored and angry. You try to keep pace, but your strokes are sloppy. Water sloshes over the edge. Beardzilla grunts beside you, not in anger, more like disappointment. You row harder, trying to impress him. Instead, your paddle slips and you punch yourself in the knee. A few Vikings chuckle. The drummer doesn't even blink. It's official. You're the comic relief of the crew. Historians still argue, you mumble to yourself, whether Viking crews were composed of elite warriors or just a bunch of guys who didn't want to be farmers. From your current position, it definitely feels like option B. The wind picks up. Your teeth chatter. And that biscuit from earlier, still sitting in your stomach like a vengeful rock. Beardzilla offers you a pouch. You accept gratefully. You sip. It's not water. It's something fermented, bitter, and with the subtle aftertaste of despair. You nod appreciatively. He smiles. Congratulations, you've passed the hydration test. Hours pass. Fjords drift by like sleepy giants. The cliffs rise on either side, dramatic and indifferent. You try to keep rhythm with the others, but your paddling now resembles interpretive dance more than anything useful. Then something new happens. A seagull lands on the edge of the ship. It looks you directly in the eye and poops on your knee. The drummer misses a beat. Someone snorts. You feel your soul deflate just a little more. You pause to wipe it off with a scrap of fur. It's no use. The fur is already soaked with previous regrets. At some point, the boat drifts toward a tiny inlet. The rowing slows. The horn sounds, a long, low note that echoes off the stone like a ghost moaning about unpaid taxes. You're docking. A small settlement looms ahead. Just a handful of sod-roofed huts, some sheep, a few stone pens, and smoke rising lazily from crooked chimneys. The place smells of wet hay, fish, and modest ambition. The Vikings disembark. You follow, limping. The ground squelches beneath your feet. You think longingly of your hiking boots, now held hostage by a child with a fondness for foot-shaped trophies. A woman greets the group, middle-aged, missing teeth, wielding a ladle like it's a weapon. She shouts something joyfully. The Vikings cheer. She ladles something into wooden bowls. The Vikings cheer louder. You are handed one. You peer in. Oh no, it's that again. Fermented fish stew. A historic fact rises from your brain's survival instincts. Lutefisk, or fish soaked in lye, was a traditional dish in parts of Scandinavia. Technically edible, legally food, spiritually punishment. You pretend to sip. The woman watches you. You sip for real. Your tongue stages a protest. You smile through the tears. She nods approvingly. You've passed another test. One more, and they'll probably give you your own sheep. The village is bustling now. Boats are being repaired, nets untangled. A man with one eye throws you a pile of damp rope and gestures to follow. You learn to coil it badly. You learn that sheep don't like to be stared at. You learn that Vikings have approximately 2 facial expressions, mildly amused and ready to invade. By nightfall, you're exhausted. Again. The longhouse here is smaller, but warmer. You curl up near the fire. Someone tosses you a fur. It's slightly less damp than yesterday's. Progress. A small child offers you a carved wooden figure. You accept. It's a crude man with an enormous nose and a comically tiny sword. You ask, "Who is this?" The child replies something that sounds like, "You." Fantastic. You're officially folklore now. As you fall asleep, your arms aching, your knees bruised, and your pride limping along behind the rest of your dignity, you hear a lullaby in the background, soft, ancient, and slightly off-key. And you think, maybe it's not about...
Morning arrives with a horn blast that feels like it's been inserted directly into your eardrum. You bolt upright, banging your head on a wooden beam, earning a splinter, a bruise, and a polite snicker from the bearded man across the fire. His name might be Thorgal, or maybe he's just really proud of his throat clearing. Outside, the village hums with excitement. People are gathering near a bonfire the size of a cottage, hauling drums, bones, furs, and bundles of wood. You hear flutes or something flutish, maybe pipes made from animal horns, and shouting children chasing a goat in ceremonial ribbons. The air smells like smoked herring and anticipation. Today is the Skald's Festival. You, naturally, have no idea what that entails, but the woman from yesterday, Ladle Lady, grabs your arm and thrusts a bundle of what might generously be called clothing into your chest. It's a robe, woolen, stitched unevenly, and dyed in what you suspect was moss juice and regret. She motions for you to change. You obey. Now dressed like a druid who lost a bet, you're escorted to the center of the crowd. You catch sight of a carved wooden stage. Sitting on it, cross-legged and very serious, is an old man with a beard that begins at his forehead and flows directly into his shoes. This is the village skald, a poet, storyteller, lore-keeper, and, judging by his expression, professional disapprover of everything. And then, without warning, a hand on your back pushes you forward. Wait, are you being presented? You glance behind you. Everyone's watching. Beardzilla gives you a thumbs up. The one-eyed man tosses you something. You catch it. A carved stick, probably a ceremonial baton. You're beginning to see the shape of this. They think you're a skald. Why? Because last night, after one sip of fermented goat milk, you tried to explain the plot of Star Wars to a group of children using only hand gestures and growling? They called it The Tale of Sky Lightning, and apparently it slaps. Now the crowd expects a sequel. You clear your throat. You glance up at the bearded bard, who raises one eyebrow with withering menace. You step forward and begin. Long ago, you say, in a Meadow, far, far away. The crowd leans in. You're sweating. There was a great warrior, you continue, named, Thorgal the Smelly. A pause. Laughter. Okay, you're in. He rode not a horse, but a great goose, a battle goose, feathered, furious, and faster than thunder. Someone claps. A child squeals. You're flying now. You spin a tale of the goose rider who steals fire from the gods, fights frost giants with sarcasm, and invents the world's first hot tub. You add drama. You add sound effects. You use a stick to draw stick figures in the mud. You end with a scream and a fall to your knees, clutching your chest, as Goose Rider Thorgal dies tragically from inhaling too much victory. Silence. Then an eruption of cheers. They love it. They're chanting your name. Gloopfrid, Gloopfrid. The old skald nods, just once, like a mountain approving of a pebble. You collapse into the grass, dizzy and slightly horrified by your own performance. Someone hands you a cup, mead. You gulp it. It tastes like bees having a crisis, sweet, burning, and inexplicably herbal. Later, as the sun sets, a full feast begins. You're given the seat of honor, between Beardzilla and the old skald. In front of you, roasted meats, bread soaked in something mysterious, a small dish of pickled something gelatinous. You eat, you drink, you try not to overthink the texture. You even start to enjoy yourself. But deep down, a question gnaws at you. What if they want another story tomorrow? You've already used Star Wars. Do you go Harry Potter next? Fast and Furious as an epic saga? Or just invent something with squirrels and volcanoes and hope no one notices? A child hands you a carved figure. It's you, again, this time holding a goose. You smile. Historians still debate the exact role of skalds in Viking society. Were they mere entertainers or semi-sacred preservers of cultural memory? You're leaning toward accidental chaos clown. As the stars come out and the last of the mead hits your bloodstream like a warm woolen wave, you drift into sleep on a pile of furs. The fire crackles. Someone snores. And in the distance, you hear someone quietly whispering the tale of Thorgal the Smelly to their child. Your legend has begun. And it smells faintly of goose.
You're woken up at dawn by a horn so loud and so close it might have actually been blown into your ear canal. You groan, trying to roll deeper into the pile of furs, but Beardzilla yanks you up like a sack of onions. He's smiling. That's never a good sign. You're marched, bleary-eyed, toward the longship again. This time, though, there's a new kind of energy, a buzz in the air, the way bees get when someone starts tapping their hive with a stick.
You hear one word repeated among the grunts, gestures, and occasional goat bleats. England. Oh no. You've read enough Wikipedia articles to know what's coming. A raid. You look for an excuse to back out. A stubbed toe, a suspicious rash, maybe some sort of bardic duty involving poetic silence. But Beardzilla slaps a helmet on your head, wooden, not iron, and hands you a shield the size of a dinner plate and about as useful. You are now officially a Viking warrior, and you are terribly underqualified. The ship launches. The rhythm of the oars kicks in. You try to find your groove again, but your arms feel like jelly wrapped in bruises. Still, you paddle, because if you don't, you suspect they'll find a new use for the smelly goose figure someone carved of you. The coastline changes. The sea gets chalkier. The drizzle turns to full-on English-style gloom. And there, on the horizon, sits a squat monastery, surrounded by sheep, soggy fields, and an aura of unsuspecting prayer. You dock. The warriors disembark. Shields up, axes ready, eyes gleaming with that particular sparkle that says, "I've been waiting all week to shout dramatically and hit things." And then someone hands you a rope. You blink. They point at the boat. Of course, you're guarding it again. The warriors charge uphill, roaring. You sit on the plank alone again, holding a rope and your tiny shield like a confused Boy Scout. At least there's no seagull this time. Hours pass. You spot a monk hiding behind a bush, clutching a book. You wave. He disappears, probably off to write about the fearsome one-eyed demon with bark shoes and a confused aura. You hope he gives you a cool nickname. You snack on some dried meat. It tastes like old regret. You hum a few verses from the Goose Rider saga. You try not to think about the morality of what's happening uphill. Historians still argue whether Viking raids were purely economic, fueled by the collapse of trade routes, or if they were driven by deeper cultural shifts, population pressure, inheritance laws, or just sheer wanderlust and boredom. You think these guys were just very bored, very strong, and really into shouting. Eventually, the warriors return. Muddy, sweaty. One is missing a sandal. One is carrying a basket full of candles and bread. Beardzilla, naturally, is holding an entire wooden door like a trophy. They look tired but pleased, like kids after trick-or-treating, but instead of candy, it's relics and possibly mild heresy. They board. You help them push off. No one says a word about your non-participation, but one guy does hand you a tiny pewter spoon and wink. You're not sure if that's an insult or a promotion. On the way back, The drummer falls asleep mid-beat. The boat moves in gentle silence. You lie back against a damp fir and watch clouds drift overhead like lazy whales. The sea rocks you gently. You doze. And then, a sudden bump. The boat stops. Everyone sits up. You look around. Nothing but fog and the distant shape of cliffs. No village, no harbor, no familiar fjord. The mood shifts. A low, uneasy murmur rolls through the crew. Beardzilla squints into the mist. The one-eyed man grips his axe tighter. A dog starts to whine. And from the shore, a shape. A human? No. Too tall. Too still. You blink. Gone. The drummer taps a cautious rhythm. The boat drifts forward. Then someone begins to hum. Low, slow. A funeral song, maybe. You get chills. The fog thickens. The cliffs rise. You whisper, "Where are we?" No one answers. Not because they don't understand, but because maybe they don't know either.
When the fog finally clears, you're staring at something you did not expect. Not a battlefield, not a monastery, a party, a full-blown Viking wedding feast. You squint from the boat as you dock beside a long wharf lined with torches and flower garlands. The air smells like mead, sweat, and grilled mystery meat. Laughter spills over the water like warm soup, and drums thump with a rhythm far too joyful for a society that casually sharpens axes during breakfast. Someone blows a horn, an actual horn, not the metaphorical kind, and a cheer erupts from the crowd on shore. As you step off the boat, still gripping your useless baby shield, a large woman immediately hands you a garland of dried flowers and goat fur. You try to protest. You fail. Your head now smells like a rustic cheese shop. You are swallowed into the feast. The tables are overflowing with food that's equal parts inviting and alarming. Skewered birds, roasted fish with eyes still attached, bowls of lumpy yellow stuff, and something that looks like bread but tastes like boiled shoe. You sit, you chew, you try not to cry. Suddenly, a group of children shout, "Gloopfrid," and pull you toward the center. There stands the happy couple, a barrel-chested man with 4 braids, and a woman who looks like she could lift an ox with one hand and braid your hair with the other. They nod respectfully, then hand you a goat horn filled with mead. And then you're dancing, badly. You flail, you stumble. You do something that might be the Macarena, but ends in you stepping in a bowl of fermented cabbage. The crowd loves it. They chant your name again. Gloop, gloop, gloop. Apparently, you're not just a guest. You're entertainment.
Beardzilla claps you on the back so hard you almost faceplant into a barrel. The one-eyed man gives you a nod of approval, which, judging by his track record, might be the Norse equivalent of "I'd die for you." A pig wanders by wearing a wreath. No one comments on this. Someone tosses a drum into your hands. You begin to play, poorly, but with enthusiasm. Your rhythm is off. Your posture is worse. But the joy? The joy is real. The bride raises a toast, then slaps the groom. The groom laughs, roars, and kisses her like a man who knows she could defeat him in battle and is fine with it. You sip mead again. It tastes like spiced honey and boiled hay. You sip more. Soon you're not so much walking as gently floating. You tell someone the story of Goose Rider Thorgal and the invisible volcano. They believe every word. A child draws it in the dirt. You are now officially a saga machine. Then comes the goat dance. A masked figure stomps into the circle, covered in fur, horns, and somehow jingle bells. The drumming intensifies. The goat leaps, spins, headbutts the groom. Cheers erupt. You ask, what is happening? Beardzilla leans in and says the only English you've ever heard from him. Tradition. Right. Of course. The goat throws something into the crowd. It's a smoked fish. You catch it. Reflexes you didn't know you had. Cheers again. You're a hero, a guest, a minor local deity, perhaps. But something nags at you. A subtle wrongness beneath the laughter. A tension. Not fear exactly, but expectation. Then the skald appears. The bearded one. The original. He stands, lifts his arms, and begins to recite. The language is ancient, melodic, harsh. Everyone listens, even the goat. You don't understand the words, but the rhythm, it feels like prophecy, like warning, like farewell. Historians still argue whether Viking wedding feasts included ritualistic storytelling meant to predict the future. But as the skald speaks, the fire flares and smoke curls like hands reaching upward.
Morning slaps you awake with the subtlety of a hammer to the face. Your head throbs. Your mouth tastes like mead, moss, and regret. Someone has tucked a pickled onion into your armpit, possibly symbolic, probably just a joke. You stagger upright and realize three things immediately. You're still wearing half a goat costume. The goat is nowhere to be seen. And there is a Viking man with an axe standing outside shouting your name. "Gloopfrid!" he bellows. You peek out from the longhouse, squinting in the early light. Beardzilla waves a hand, beckoning. Beside him, a pile of weapons, wooden targets, and at least one child holding a squirrel. Oh no. It's training day. You're being sent
to Viking school. You walk slowly toward the group, your bark sandal squelching with every step. The axe they hand you is too large, too heavy, and feels like it might have opinions of its own. Your first task? Throwing it. You step up to the marked log. Everyone stares. Children whisper. A woman in the back crosses her arms with the kind of look that says, "Don't embarrass us in front of the goat again." You grip the axe. You take a breath. You throw. And the axe spins backward. It misses the target by 4 Viking miles, clatters into a nearby barrel, and causes a mild panic among the chickens. One chicken faints, probably from laughter. The crowd groans. You bow slightly. It was a metaphor, you say, in English, symbolic. No one laughs. Undeterred, Beardzilla claps you on the back and sets up a second attempt. This time, you grip tighter. You aim. You swing. The axe slips mid-air, rotates like a confused ceiling fan, and lands blade first in a wooden bowl of stew. There is a splat, a pause, and then raucous laughter. You may have just invented Viking dodgeball. The children take this very seriously. Within minutes, they are flinging sticks, bones, spoons, anything throwable at each other. Someone paints a circle on a sheep. The sheep does not consent. And you? You're crowned the skegkastari, the beard thrower, a title born not of glory, but of entertainment. Later, you're handed a shield the size of a pizza and paired up with a boy half your size who proceeds to whack you repeatedly with a stick while screaming about sea serpents. You defend yourself with something resembling ballet. Someone draws your pose in the dirt. You're now folklore again, this time in a heroic interpretive dance saga. Break time brings salted fish jerky and sour milk. You chew dutifully, trying not to inhale. Nearby, 2 elders argue about the best time of year to raid Ireland. One says spring, because monks are sleepy after Lent. The other says fall, because the monks are too full of bread to run. Historians still argue whether Viking raids were seasonal or simply opportunistic. You decide the answer is whenever someone was bored and had a boat. After lunch, you're shown how to sharpen a blade. You manage to sand your thumbnail into oblivion. Then someone suggests horse practice. You're thrilled. Until they point to a log and tell you to balance on it while making warrior sounds. You fall. Twice, once on purpose, just to feel something. The children applaud. Back on solid ground, you're introduced to a horn-blowing competition. You try. The sound you produce causes 2 men to flinch, a baby to cry, and a passing raven to immediately change direction. But your effort is respected. You're given a half-burnt biscuit, a high honor. By sunset, you're exhausted, bruised, and your hands smell like goat fat and pine sap. You sit by the fire, sore in places you didn't know could ache. Beardzilla passes you a cup. You sip. It's, stronger than mead. Possibly just pain in liquid form. You exhale, gazing into the flames. Around you, the village is quieter. The weapons are put away. Children chase each other with sticks, shouting something about the Great Duck War. Adults hum old songs. Somewhere, someone strums a lyre tuned to slightly off. You smile despite yourself. You failed every test. And yet, you're still here. Still Gloopfrid. Still part of something older, strange.
You wake up to shouting, chickens, and a man arguing with a goat. Another day, another opportunity to embarrass yourself in front of people who think soap is a seasonal luxury. Today is Trading Day, a local event that, you are told, happens when the moon looks like a cheese wheel and the pigs refuse to sleep. You take this to mean roughly weekly, weather permitting. The longships are already being loaded with goods, baskets of dried fish, bundles of fur, mystery jars that might contain honey or curses, and 2 bored-looking geese tied together like a makeshift compass. You're shoved into the boat and handed a pouch of items to barter with. You open it. Inside, a carved spoon, a fossilized turnip, and a very small wooden statue of what might be you, or possibly a tree with arms. You sigh. You're ready. The market appears as a cluster of tents and stalls set up along a muddy shoreline. Dozens of Vikings from nearby settlements are already bartering, haggling, shouting, and occasionally punching each other in what you assume is friendly disagreement. The smell? An intense cocktail of wet fur, smoked meat, pine tar, and someone's particularly assertive breath. You step off the boat and immediately almost lose your bark sandal in the mud. A small child offers to trade you a rock for your other shoe. You politely decline. The child stares at you with the icy fury of a jaded landlord. Your first stop, a stall selling ornamental feathers, polished stones, and extremely aggressive squirrels in cages. The vendor grins, slaps your back, and says something that might have been a joke or a threat. You smile nervously and back away, clutching your turnip pouch like it's a family heirloom. Then you see him. A tall man in blue furs and a hat that resembles a mushroom. His stall features reindeer hides, intricate beadwork, dried herbs, and a live raven that keeps screaming Bjorn at no one in particular. You walk up, intrigued. He looks you over, sniffs once, and mutters something in a language that sounds like a glacier chewing gravel. Ah, a Sami trader. You attempt to trade your fossilized turnip for a tiny carved bear. He stares at you. You try again, this time offering the statue that may or may not be you. He pauses, then bursts into laughter. Points at it, points at your face, points again. Bjorn, says the raven, possibly as commentary. Apparently, you've just bartered a self-portrait for a reindeer skin pouch and a bracelet made of bones. Success? You think so. You bow awkwardly. He hands you a piece of dried meat as a parting gift. You chew it later. It tastes like disappointment and lichen. You wander further. There's a man selling fake relics, fragments of Thor's tooth, authentic Christian monk hair, and a piece of wood from the original goose chariot. You buy that out of principle. Historians still argue whether Viking markets were truly places of regional trade or semi-ritual gatherings disguised as chaos. Based on what you're seeing, two men fencing with loaves of bread and a woman yelling at a bearskin, you're leaning toward both. Eventually, you sit to rest near a fire pit, your pouch now full of dubious treasures. A reindeer pouch, a shard of pottery, 2 beads, and what you're told is a blessing in stone form. It looks like a pebble. A man sits beside you. He's young, quiet, wearing a cloak of raven feathers and eyes like someone who's seen too many winters. He nods towards your bundle and asks a question. You have no idea what he says. You nod anyway. He pulls something from his cloak, a scroll bound with seal wax and twine. He unwraps it and points to the symbols. You recognize none of them. He taps your chest, then the scroll, then your chest again. You nod again. He smiles and leaves. Congratulations! You've just possibly agreed to adopt someone's cursed inheritance. You walk back to the ship as the sun begins to set. The fjord glows orange and pink. Seabirds glide overhead. Someone's wrestling an eel. Standard Viking market closure. Beardzilla pats your back and looks in your pouch. He grunts in approval. The one-eyed man takes your pebble and holds it up to the sky, murmuring something reverent. You don't understand. You don't need to. For now, you're Gloopfrid, trader, collector of nonsense, wearer of bark sandals and unearned confidence. As the boat glides home,
you awaken to a voice shouting your name in a tone that suggests something either glorious or horrifying has happened. Probably both. You stumble outside, still wearing yesterday's tunic, which now smells like seaweed and vague shame, and find Beardzilla holding a scroll, a very old scroll, tied with twine, sealed in wax, and smudged with what you hope is just soot. He waves it like a banner and grunts something enthusiastic. You're ushered to the longhouse, where a small crowd has already gathered. Elders, warriors, children, a goose for some reason, and all of them are eyeing you with a mixture of admiration and deeply suppressed giggles. The skald steps forward, dramatically unfurls the scroll, and clears his throat. He begins to recite. The crowd leans in. You lean in. The scroll, it turns out, is a written saga about you. Yes, you. The one who fell into a stew. The one who threw an axe backwards. The one who, invented, quite unintentionally, shield ballet. And now all your misadventures have been immortalized in badly spelled runes and poetic metaphors that generously describe your fumbles as sky-blessed stumblings of prophetic clumsiness. You're referred to as Gloopfrid the soft-fingered. A child snorts milk through their nose. One stanza lovingly details your battle with the legendary flatfish that refused to die, which, if memory serves, was just you losing a fight with your lunch. Another verse recounts your first saga, Thorgol the Goose Rider, as a sacred vision that inspired at least one marriage proposal and a mural near the latrines. And then the skald finishes. Everyone applauds. You bow. Beardzilla proudly holds up the scroll and slaps your back, hard. You fly forward into the mud. Cheers again. Apparently, falling down well is part of your legend. Later that day, the scroll is nailed to the side of the longhouse. People stop by to read it. Some ask you to explain certain metaphors. You make things up. Sky-buttered footsteps becomes destiny. Fish of many minds becomes courage. The farting goose omen speaks for itself. And the children? They start acting it out. One wears a bundle of feathers and gallops around on all fours. Another ties spoons to their belt and demands to be addressed as Spoon Warrior Second Class. You're teaching history, badly, but with enthusiasm. Historians still argue whether Norse oral traditions were ever written down during the Viking Age, or only centuries later by Christian scribes. What they agree on, though, is this: memory in Viking culture was sacred. And if memory includes you being tackled by a goat during a ceremonial dance, so be it. By evening, you find yourself seated in front of the scroll, lit by torchlight. The skald sits beside you, carefully adding new lines. You glance over. He's writing about your recent trade, the cursed inheritance scroll, the stone blessing, the deal with the mushroom hat man. It's being framed as mystical. You're now Gloopfrid the Whisperer of Stones, which sounds mysterious until you recall accidentally swallowing that pebble. The skald pauses, hands you the quill. He gestures. Right. You stare at him, at the crowd, at the scroll. You dip the quill in ink, and in your best attempt at Viking runes, which are really just squiggles and hope, you scrawl 3 crooked symbols. The skald nods solemnly, as though you've just written prophecy. You've contributed. You've officially entered the historical record. Is it accurate? No. Is it dignified? Also no. But it is yours. That night, you lie on your fur pile, hands still ink-stained, listening to distant laughter and a goat with a cold. You think about the stories we tell, the real ones, the fake ones, and the ones we whisper to ourselves in the dark to make the mud feel warmer. Your saga is being written, not with glory, not with blood, but with a backward-thrown axe, a half-eaten scroll, and a name no one can pronounce properly. You smile. Sleep takes you, and somewhere in your dreams, a goose carries you to Valhalla. It begins with a thump, then another, then a very faint creak, like parchment being unrolled by ghosts. You sit up, rubbing your eyes. It's still dark, just before dawn. A low mist curls along the village paths. Somewhere nearby, a dog coughs like an old man trying not to interrupt a funeral. You hear it again. The scroll. Your scroll. Someone is reading it. You peek outside. At the fire pit, lit dimly by embers, sits a group of elders, and in their midst, the one-eyed man. He's holding the saga of Gloopfrid like it's a holy text. His voice is low, almost reverent, as he reads aloud the tale of your legendary duel with the enchanted eel of the South Barrel. You vaguely recall slipping in the fish bin and yelling, "It's alive!" Then he unfurls something new. A second scroll. Wait. No, not new. It's the scroll the mysterious trader gave you, the one you bartered your face statue for. You watch as he holds it up to the firelight. The ink glistens. The runes are sharp, curling, unfamiliar, not like the local ones scratched into doors or cups. The skald leans in beside him. Both men murmur in the old language, pointing at symbols and nodding slowly. You step forward, half curious, half nervous. You've accidentally smuggled in a cursed prophecy. They glance at you. The skald pats the seat beside him. You sit. They explain slowly, with gestures, drawings, and a patient rhythm usually reserved for explaining thunderstorms to goats. You gather this much. The scroll appears to be a prophetic saga, one that tells of a stranger from across the sea, who arrives with no blade, no braid, but eyes that see two worlds. A poetic way to describe your glasses, probably. It says the stranger will carry stories like fire in the mouth, and leave behind thunder of laughter and confusion. You point to yourself. They nod. You point to the part where the stranger rides a sky wheel of metal and light. They point to the DeLorean sketch you'd drawn in the mud for the kids 2 days ago. You laugh nervously. The scroll ends with a strange stanza. When the goose returns and the moon turns sour, the gloop shall walk both stone and star. His tail shall stretch from fjord to fire, and never once shall his boots match. You glance down at your mismatched footwear. Well then. Historians still debate whether Viking prophecy was part of daily life or reserved for dramatic storytelling. But in this moment, it seems clear. You've become a character in someone else's myth, a walking contradiction, a joke and a symbol, the peanut butter smear on the manuscript of fate. You're not sure how to feel about that. The one-eyed man rolls up the scroll and hands it to you. He touches his forehead, then yours. A gesture of respect? Or a blessing? Or maybe he just thinks you're very, very dumb. Later, back in the longhouse, you unroll both scrolls, yours and the prophecy, and compare the handwriting. The styles are different. One shaky and playful, the other precise and ancient. You get a wild idea. You begin to add to the prophecy. You write your own verse, badly. You describe the feast of the dancing goat, the great fish duel, and the time you sneezed during the skald's prayer and nearly started a war. You draw little stick figures. You doodle a frowning goose. You include a recipe for what you believe is mead, but might be medieval NyQuil. And you sign it. Gloopfrid, very tired, but trying. When the others wake, they see your additions. They nod like scholars. One even weeps quietly. You are not just a story now. You are helping write the myth. A small child asks you to bless her spoon. You do. A teenage boy carves your face into a tree. You suggest they add eyebrows. A man offers you his goat. You decline. Later, a raven lands beside you. It tilts its head, stares, and caws. Gloop. You stare back. The one-eyed man smiles. "I think he likes you," he says. In perfect English. You freeze. But when you look back, he's gone. Just missed. And a scroll that now ends with new lines you don't remember writing. You tuck it into your pouch. Your saga continues. And the border between history, myth, and hangover gets thinner by the hour.
It starts with cheese, which you've learned is never a good sign in this timeline. A young boy with soot on his nose and wild excitement in his eyes shoves a piece of moldy-looking cheese into your hand at breakfast. He says a word you've learned to fear: ritual. You chew it. You regret everything. Your lips tingle. Your ears warm. The longhouse seems to expand and contract like it's breathing. The dog under the table now has 6 eyes. Probably not normal. Beardzilla enters dramatically, wearing a ceremonial wolf pelt and no pants. He claps twice. The others rise. You rise with them. It's either a deeply sacred rite or extremely well-organized nonsense. Outside, the villagers gather around a large flat stone encircled by animal bones, herbs, and what appears to be a very confused chicken wearing beads. You are led to the center. The skald steps forward, raising a gnarled staff topped with feathers and what may or may not be a preserved tongue. He chants. Someone throws smoke powder onto the fire. It explodes. The smoke swirls around you like a living thing, sweet and sharp, carrying the scent of sage, pine resin, and something vaguely suspicious, like wet sock steeped in elderberry tea. You blink. The villagers vanish behind the haze. Shapes dance in the smoke. The skald chants louder now. His voice trembles like a broken harp string, high, warbling, almost silly,
except for the way everyone else treats it with the hushed reverence of someone announcing a thunder god's arrival. You try to clap along. Beardzilla stops your hands gently, as if to say, "Not this time, Gloopfrid." Then he places something in your mouth. A mushroom. Raw, spongy, earthy. Absolutely the worst thing you've tasted since fermented fish pudding. A cheer erupts. The others start dancing. Drums pound, uneven and primal. Someone begins screaming in joy, or possibly indigestion, you're not sure. And then the world tilts. The ground below you feels soft, like bread dough. The fire breathes, and the sky cracks open. Not literally, but in a way that convinces your deeply altered brain that maybe reality is optional today. A tree rises from the center of the ritual circle, enormous, coiling into the sky, dripping stars from its branches like dew. You reach out and touch it. The bark pulses like it has a heartbeat. Somewhere nearby, a child laughs. Or is it a raven? You blink. You're now sitting in a boat made of clouds, rowing gently through the night sky, past constellations shaped like goats, drinking horns, and your own startled face. On the horizon, a hall with doors wide open. Light pours out, soft, golden, inviting. You hear music, laughter, someone saying your name. Gloopfrid. You step toward it. And then trip. You fall, slowly, lazily, through fog, through furs, through the memory of your 9th birthday, through a bowl of soup, and land squarely on your back in the middle of the ritual circle, coughing, blinking, and clutching a spoon. Everyone cheers. Apparently, your vision went well. Someone shouts, "Odin blesses the spoon." Another yells, "He saw the sky battle." And one child, weeping, whispers, "He flew a goat through the stars." You are gently helped up and given a cup of, surprise, mead. It tastes like tree sap and euphoria. Later, by the fire, you try to explain what you saw. The tree, you whispered, had opinions. The villagers nod, deeply moved. A woman offers you a loaf of bread. It's still warm. She says it's shaped like the sky tree. You eat it. It tastes mostly like flour and modest ambition. Beardzilla slaps your shoulder. Gloopfrid, he says, then mimes wings, points to the sky, and raises his eyebrows. You nod solemnly. Yes, you say. I flew the goose. Everyone bows their heads. You are now Gloopfrid the Skywalker, prophet of the feathered tree, seer of slightly concerning visions. Historians still debate whether Viking hallucinogenic rituals were widespread or limited to specific cultic practices. What is certain, people found meaning in dreams, symbols, and fermented dairy. You found mushrooms, smoke, and the uncomfortable realization that your subconscious is mostly shaped like cheese and panic. That night, children huddle near you asking for stories of the sky tree. You tell them the one about a goose king named Flarn, who rules a moon made of fish bones and commands an army of axe-wielding squirrels. They gasp. One faints. The skald carves it into a new scroll. You watch the stars twinkle above and wonder, were you chosen for this? Or did you just look gullible enough to eat a strange mushroom without asking questions? Either way, the stars look closer now, and the spoon in your hand hums. You fall asleep smiling, dreaming of goats with wings and a tree that whispers bedtime stories in the voice of Morgan Freeman.
You wake up under a pile of furs and bread. Literally, someone has used loaves of bread as insulation. They are warm, crusty, and oddly comforting. You consider eating one, but decide to leave it for future you, in case of emotional collapse. Outside, the world is white. A blanket of snow has covered the village overnight. The longhouse is silent, save for the soft crackling of the fire, and the occasional sniffle from Beardzilla, who, somehow, has a cold. You push the door open. The cold punches you square in the lungs. Your breath fogs immediately. Every surface is dusted in white. Boats, goats, helmets, small children. The fjord is half frozen, glittering like spilled sugar. It's beautiful and miserable. Winter, you realize, has arrived. You are handed a woolen hat. It's way too small. Someone knits another one on the spot. It's also too small. You end up layering 3 of them like mushroom caps and pretending this is intentional. Your new role? Shoveling smo off roofs with a flat piece of bone. You last 6 minutes before developing deep spiritual regrets. By midday, the entire village is inside the longhouse, bundled in wool, drinking something, and trying not to move more than necessary. You sit wedged between 2 elders, who are arguing whether or not frost is a gift from the gods or punishment for someone's unseasonal goose summoning. You try to contribute. Maybe it's just weather? They look at you like you just called Odin overrated. Then someone sneezes. A horrible, wet, legendary sneeze. The longhouse quiets. Eyes widen. The sneezer is slowly handed a wool blanket and politely relocated to the sick corner, which is just a pile of hay and a few garlic cloves. You ask if this is common? Beardzilla explains via gestures, miming, and one extremely graphic drawing that cold season is a time of caution. People get sick. People stay inside. People stew things. And sometimes people go mad. He points at the roof beam. It's carved with tally marks. You ask? Last winter, he says solemnly. 7 weeks indoors. You gulp. By evening, the stew is bubbling. You poke at it. There's something floating. Possibly a root, possibly a rat. You eat it anyway. Your standards have plummeted. A child offers you a new figurine. This one of you, holding a spoon in one hand and a chicken in the other,
standing on a mountain of cheese. You nod solemnly. The child looks proud. You are myth now. You try to escape the cramped air by stepping outside. Snow everywhere. You can barely see the boats. The fjord groans under its frozen skin. The sky is a smear of gray and silence. You think this is the part of the vacation where normal people check out early. But you trudge through snow to the fire pit and sit anyway. Your breath steams, your knees ache, and yet you feel something resembling peace. Back inside, the villagers start telling winter tales. One is about a man who turned into a bear because he forgot to thank the wind. Another involves a magical reindeer who grants wishes, but only to people who can rhyme convincingly. You're pulled into the storytelling. You try to explain Frozen. They think it's real. A woman begins composing a song called Elska of the Snowheart and insists you must play the ice demon who whispers to children through keyholes. You accept, because what else is there to do? Historians still argue how Norse people coped psychologically with the long winters, through story, song, ritual, or mild hallucination brought on by cabin fever and turnip fatigue. Based on current experience, yes. That night, someone gives birth. No one panics. They just hand the new mother a bowl of stew and a fur, and life continues. You lie back, staring at the rafters, thinking of the world you left. Central heating, radiators, Netflix. And yet, here, in this smoky, loud, cabbage-scented hovel, you feel weirdly at home. The cold rattles the walls, a dog howls, but you are warm, and your spoon is still humming. The snow has melted just enough to reveal mud. Not spring, just mud. Endless, squelching, boot-stealing, toe-freezing mud. You lose a bark sandal on your first step outside and never see it again. A goat walks past later wearing it like a trophy. Today is the day of the Great Raid. It's been whispered about for days now, between mouthfuls of dried fish and spoon-blessing ceremonies. The elders described it with solemn faces. The warriors sharpened their axes while staring dramatically into the distance. One man cried while polishing his helmet, though that may have just been onion fumes. And now you're standing in a row with the rest of them, clutching your tiny shield and wearing a helmet that slides down over your eyebrows whenever you breathe. The plan is simple. Sail up the fjord, sneak around a bend, and raid a small coastal outpost that definitely owes someone something. That's as specific as the strategy gets. Beardzilla hands you a spear. You nearly drop it. He narrows his eyes, then trades it for a stick with a pointy end and says, "Try not to poke yourself." The boat launches. Drums beat. Spirits rise. You row. Badly. The mist closes around the ship like a wet curtain. The wind tastes like moss, A raven follows you for half a mile and then bails, probably sensing disaster. The shoreline appears suddenly. Rocks, a few wooden huts, a sad little jetty with one abandoned fishing net fluttering in the breeze. The Vikings leap ashore with cries of valor. You stumble off the boat, land ankle deep in mud, and immediately lose your footing. Your battle begins. You are sent to the left flank. It's just you, one guy with a club, and someone wearing half a barrel like armor. The outpost turns out to be a cottage. Just one. The door creaks open to reveal a man with wild hair holding a fish in each hand. He sees the raiders, sighs deeply, and sets the fish down. The battle lasts 6 minutes. One Viking gets bitten by a goose. Someone trips over a turnip cart. You try to shield bash a bucket and miss. The door is knocked off its hinges, and everyone cheers like it was a castle gate. Loot acquired: 3 baskets of dried apples, a rope, 1 boot, not yours, a jar labeled Fish Thoughts. Triumphant, the warriors gather the loot, hand you the apples to carry, and reboard the boat. You are now the official loot bearer, a title that makes your arms sore and your dignity evaporate. On the ride back, everyone is euphoric. They chant. They sing. One guy writes a saga on a fish skin using charcoal and raw optimism. And you? You just try not to drop the jar of fish thoughts, which is definitely buzzing. Back at the village, the crowd welcomes you like heroes. Children throw pine cones. Someone gives you a crown of driftwood. You try to explain that the raid wasn't exactly glorious. No one listens. The skald is already halfway through composing The Day of the Thunder Apples. It's all very epic, especially the part where you allegedly fought 12 wolves with a shining fork. You shrug. Close enough. Later that night, a feast is held. The jar of fish thoughts is opened. It smells like regret and maybe vinegar. The apples are sliced and declared tart but spiritually cleansing. You are toasted 5 separately. And then a small woman places a shoe in your lap. Your lost bark sandal, cleaned, polished, decorated with a ribbon. You are overcome. Historians still argue whether Viking raids were as bloody and merciless as some accounts claim. Certainly there were battles, plundering, and fire, but also, clearly, the occasional mild misunderstanding involving fish and mud. You lie awake in the longhouse, staring at the rafters, your sandal now tied to your wrist like a keepsake. The village sleeps. The jar of fish thoughts glows faintly in the corner. And you, Gloopfrid the loot-bearer, know this truth. You raided. You survived. You did not, however, keep your other shoe. And in Viking culture, that's still a win.
It's your last night. You can feel it. Not because anyone told you. Not because the sky is doing anything particularly symbolic, but because the world has taken on that quiet, curtain-closing stillness, the kind that always comes before goodbyes. You sit by the central fire, wrapped in furs and stories, surrounded by people who once mistook your phone case for a sacred stone and your socks for a form of magical binding. The flames crackle low. Beardzilla snores gently to your right, his enormous frame curled like a wolf dog. The skald is mumbling in his sleep, whispering saga fragments that may or may not be about you. Someone placed a fresh scroll beside you earlier, blank, waiting. You haven't touched it. Instead, you listen to the fire, to the breathing, to the wind curling through the gaps in the longhouse timbers like a lazy cat. It's hard to believe how far you've come from that tourist taking a selfie by the fjord, from the guy who couldn't tell a runstone from a slightly fancy rock. You remember your first bowl of stew, the backwards axe throw, the fish duel, the mushroom vision, the jar of fish thoughts which continues to hum ominously somewhere in the corner. You remember the absurdity, and the beauty, and the quiet nobility of a people who laugh with their bellies, eat with their hands, and remember with their hearts. Someone begins to sing, soft, low, a lullaby maybe, or a funeral song. The melody coils around you like mist. You close your eyes, and when you open them, you're standing back at the fjord. It's morning, the same cliff where you slipped, the same mist. Only now you're barefoot, bark sandal tied to your belt, fur cloak around your shoulders, a small wooden spoon in your hand, your only souvenir. Behind you, no longhouse, no boats, no beardzilla, just silence. You reach for your pocket. Your phone is there, battery dead, camera cracked. You laugh softly. You sit on a stone and watch the mist burn away under the early sun. No one will believe this, not really. They'll think you got drunk on goat's milk beer and tripped in a museum exhibit. But you know. Somewhere your saga has been sung. Somewhere a skald still adds lines about the strange, soft-fingered man from the sky who once traded a rock for a bracelet and taught children to dance with spoons. You inhale, you exhale, and you walk home. Now let the journey settle in your bones. The mud, the cold, the laughter in a language you never quite learned, the feeling of fur on your skin and snow in your socks, the steady thrum of oars and the heat of a fire that never went out. You were a stranger once, then a skald, then a joke, then something more, a whisper in someone's saga, a doodle in the margins of Viking memory. And now you rest, not because the story ended, but because your part in it did. Let your breath soften. Let your shoulders fall. Think of the fjord, silent and still under the morning fog. Think of the longhouse, filled with sleeping bodies, warm and tangled in the gentle rhythm of winter dreams. You are not forgotten. You are not lost. You are simply home. Sleep now, traveler. The boats are moored. The fire is low, and the spoon is humming quietly in your hand.